Hello, everybody. Good to see some folks tonight for my 10th and final episode of the season. Excuse me. Good to see Ken here, uh, Bear, Love, and Charlie, and Robert's here tonight. So glad to see some folks are here. Uh, so just a little update. The reason why I was a little late starting is my guest tonight was supposed to be it's Chad, and I have no idea where he's at. So yeah, it happens. I don't know if there's a mix up. I've messaged him. We were all set, but things happen. I don't know. Hopefully everything's going well with him. Um, so he may show up. Maybe it's been a timing issue. I'm on the East Coast. He's in the Arizona. I think that's what Mountain Time or something like that. So who knows? Again, I just hope everything's well with him. Stu, good to see you. Cooter, good to see you too. So a few things we wrap up this year. Like I said, I've learned a lot this year. This is my first attempt with the YouTube streaming. I did once a month. Try to make it easy on me in a very crowded space. Like I said, I know there's some other things going on tonight, and kind of wanted to stop in October, and so I could kind of reassess, what I want to do for next year, starting in January. So that's how you got a lot of stuff going on. Busy, personal life, and also collecting wise. I've actually now started, since the last time we met, I've got all this cleaned up behind me, and I'm still putting together shelves. Got to figure out lighting, just making this really nice in here. So just got to keep pushing along. So I'm still just trying to kind of stall for time for a little bit to see if Chad's going to show up. But take a look, check one more time. If I got a message reply. Nope. So anyway, so one of the things we were going to do tonight is when back in 1994, for those that were around, suddenly out of nowhere, it seemed the G.I. Joe brand, the 3 3/4 inch, it's starting to go down a little bit. They'd the waves were starting to get smaller. They had gone to they were doing a lot of accessories, but they were all coming in on the little model trees with the neon colors. The concepts were kind of getting out there a little bit. Then the next rumor thing was going to be the Battle Core, which they were going to lean a little bit more into vehicles, but they were changing the molds. Or actually the figures would actually lose articulation with the Battle Core. Excuse me. And of course, they decided in 1994 to shut that down, to end a real American hero. Then and Chad knows a lot more about this than I do, but then they had acquired Kenner and were pushing the Power of the Force line with the Star Wars stuff, and so they handed the G.I. Joe over to Kenner, and they did the G.I. Joe Extreme. Hasbro tried the Sergeant Rocket, the larger size figures with the little bit of articulation. The downgrade articulation to them, and then they went to the Extreme. Remember back in 94, 95 time, the figures who were cutting the articulation and going more towards posed figures. That was a big thing with the Playmates Turtles and stuff like that. Yeah, the landscape was changing for a while, but then but you still had stuff like the G.I. Joe Club had really started going at that time, and they were they saw there was still some demand for the 3 3/4 inch figures. So in 1998, after only shutting down the market for about 4 years, they did the Toys R Us relaunch, and that's where they kind of just remolded put out the same figures they did before with different colors. You could tell the plastic was a lot different. It was like a cheaper style plastic to start with, and then but they released some vehicles again. They did the repaint of the Rattler to try to pass off as an A-10 Thunderbolt. Then we got the Conquest. That was done in a camouflage, a few other things, and it did well enough that they kind of started continuing that line. So from 98, 99 to 2000, we've gotten some more figures, and then around 2001, I think they launched was when they launched the Joe versus Cobra line, and it was a mixture of older figures repainted, and then some newer sculpts where they took out a lot of the articulation, if you remember that. So it's kind of a mixed bag of new things. But one of the things they tried to do is they tried to give us some new characters, and then from every wave as they went on, and they get into the Valor versus Venom, which was a lot better. I'm sorry, Spy Troops, and then we got some new vehicles, and old and new characters. Still kind of a mix of the old style with some better new styles, and it kept going on into the Valor versus Venom. And then in 2004, I remember I went to the G.I. Joe convention in Orlando, Florida, and Daryl DePriest was there, and he was talking about how they had figured out a new way to make the figures, so it wouldn't rely on the O-rings and the screws in the back like they used to. And basically, we got some brand new articulated figures going into kind of the 4-inch scale with some classic stuff going around. And that's also about the same time the articulation in the Star Wars figures started to go up. And then eventually we went into the 25th anniversary line. And then from the 21st anniversary line, it rolls into, the Joe versus the G.I. Joe movie, with the movie style figures, and then again with the Pursuit of Cobra line after that. But all through this, they sprinkled in some new characters. But then, but the further they went into the line again, especially with the 25th, because you kind of expect that at 25th, is we started getting the same old characters again. And then it seemed like every wave you're pumping out a new Snake Eyes, new version of Snake Eyes, Cobra Commander. For some reason, Heavy Duty became a big figure they would produce over and over and over again. So what I want to do with Chad is kind of, one of the things we talked about, with the classified line, is this insistence of keep going back and redoing things that have already been done, but just in 6-inch scale. And it's almost like, Hasbro doesn't want to do anything that isn't new. I mean, they just stick to the same old proven things over and over again, and not really giving us anything new. I know there's been like 1 or 2 new characters in the classified line. I think Wolf Spider was a new character, and some of the Cobras have been there as well. But what I want to do is I kind of was like, the thing is, like, keep making Snake Eyes over and over again, and all these things, and these were characters that were introduced in the early '80s, and their backgrounds where they were, a lot of them had been in Vietnam and stuff like that, and then so it was kind of like a sense of, and the way they did the canon of it was that this was kind of a continuation of the G.I. Joe line. I remember the comics when they introduced the G.I. Joe, as a character, and how they connect that back to the old action figures of the 60s. And so kind of like, so now we have a line that seems to refuse to move forward with itself. They keep repeating the thing the past. They really don't try to do anything forward. So what we did is we looked at so the challenge for Chad and I were to go back and pick 10 characters from the post 94 line that weren't in the comic books, and I'm not counting that when the comic book ended back in the 90s, in the line in the 90s, anything moving forward, that they weren't in the comic books, they weren't featured in cartoons. They were produced specifically for, Joe versus Cobra going forward. 10 characters kind of relaunch the GI Joe team as a brand new team, as if it was shut down in the 90s and then brought back again. And the only caveat we had is that we would pick 10 figures and then 10 characters, excuse me, and then pick one character from the original 82 to 94 line that could conceivably be the commander of the new team. So we wanted the kind of the legacy going into into that. So I was really excited to see what that was, to see what Chad had come up with, to see which ones I picked that he picked. But like I said, but what I want to do anyways, I'm going to go ahead and I want to share what my 10 picks were. And in the chat, you can tell me what you think. You can put in your picks. Again, there was kind of a lot going on in that beginning post 94, in that 98 to, especially going into the spy troops, then the Valor versus Venom. Hey, Abby, how you doing? Line with that. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my picks. These are my 10 picks. If we were launching GI Joe as a new 3 3/4 inch brand, using characters that were created post 94 to be the new base of a team. So this would kind of be like the first wave, kind of like the original 13. But we're starting 10 with one legacy character as the commander. And I want to kind of go through these picks and explain my reasons behind some of these. And actually, just let me know what you guys think. So with that, my first pick was going to be Agent Faces. This is one that came out during the I think the Spy Troops line. He came with a couple of masks to put on. He was in the Spy Troops cartoon they did, infiltrating Cobra. So I kind of wanted a guy that was going to be like the kind of like the Chuckles. Somebody, all these characters kind of like have a touchback to the previous show. He's kind of the he's the undercover guy. He's the the tough. Yeah. So the somebody that could infiltrate the bad guys at deep undercover work, but a military background as well. So he's kind of he's kind of like my comic relief character, the guy that was always fun, pulling pranks on people, and stuff like that. So number 2 was going to be Bomb Strike. This was great. This is like the first new female figure we'd gotten for a while, especially with her backstory of being the sister to, I think it was Barrel Roll, and then Blackout, who defected to be a Cobra. So kind of the family going thing, but also she was kind of my idea for a Lady J analog. Just the regular female soldier of the day. Kind of like I said, this is like a really good. I think they did 2 versions of this figure, and they did a repaint of this figure as not Lady J, GI Jane in a pack. And then I think they gave her a figure subscription service when they were doing when the Jericho was doing that as well. So we got a few versions of this figure. So plus I wanted a good female character on the team. I really liked this figure when I had it back when I was collecting them and had it. Just really liked it. I thought that would be a good choice as a new addition to this brand new GI Joe team. So the third one was Crosshair. I kind of like the sniper. I think this one was this version, and all these figures. Just so you know, I'm going to give credit to all these pictures. I pulled them off of Yojo.com. So don't at me or anything. I don't monetize this channel. So. But I think this was the figure subscription service. I actually found one the other day, one of the original ones at the local comic book store. It's just a really cool figure. Had a lot of great accessories to them. I like the sniper. I think you need a good marksman on the team. There's something really cool about that. And he got several figures in the line. And he's just a really good addition to the new, as a new character, as to show that the line was moving forward, and that these folks just weren't aging in place. So next, it was Dart. This is one that he got a few variations, basically the same figure. He kind of did a couple paint jobs. I like him. This is kind of the touchback to Spirit. He's a Native American, and a scout. A scout and a tracker. I just kind of like that idea. That was always really cool as a kid. Spirit was one of my favorite ones growing up, but I kind of like wanted that little touchback, with that. So it's cool to have a character that could, that wasn't like a stereotype, but had the, just some cool abilities and just being able to track. And it's like, he wasn't like mystical, kind of like, how they try to do, especially the cartoon. I think they really went deep stereotypical with Spirit. In the comic, Larry Hama was a little bit more restrained with them. But this is kind of how when this came out, it was kind of like, this is not, he's not mystical. He's like, sniffing the wind and stuff like that. He's applying skills, that he learned, hunting and growing up and things like that. That's probably what they probably lost the Robert. They probably lost the the rights of Spirit for a while, knowing them, which is probably why they keep calling him Spirit Iron Knife and everything they show him in. But again, it was a really neat figure. It had, like some of the details with the medallion and the armbands and stuff like that. So moving forward, depth charge. So I wanted to avoid in the first run of this a lot of specialty troopers, like Arctic and desert and stuff like that. But I did feel the need to throw in one diver because depth charge is the part of the Navy SEALs. They do more than just dive. Of course, it's what they do with this. I also kind of liked his file cards. He actually does not like water, but he considers it a challenge to be in there. And plus, I live in Florida. Like I said, all the Arctic and desert stuff does nothing for me. When I was a kid, I was so happy when I got Torpedo. Because I had like a diver I could take to the beach or to the swimming pool, and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to include, so one specialist with the water. They actually did several different versions of this figure. I think even into the Rise of Cobra line. They kept just repainting Torpedo over and over again in different colors to do all the other divers of it. And I liked it too because everybody loves Shipwreck. I never liked it when in the toy line, when they made Shipwreck a SEAL. Yeah, the Spy Trek did ruin. Yeah, the Spy Trek was kind of always hit or miss with those accessories, especially the Cobra disguises, stuff like that. But again, it's like, I just pulled this figure. It's like the first one I pulled, but they definitely did better versions of it as they went along with that. So there's my Navy SEAL guy. And next, so this one, Dial Tone, I picked this for a couple of reasons. One is I wanted the name because again, I like how it's a touchback to the original Real American Hero line. And I know on the file card, I guess they said this is like the original Dial Tone's sister that took his place. Well, didn't take his place, but she joined the military and eventually worked up. So, and you need communications. Modern military is run on communications as well. And I think she also had they used her a little bit in the Resolute cartoon. As well. So you got to see her there. But I just kind of like that idea of having, somebody that had a code name, because a lot of times what they'll do is they'll, especially in the Transformers, they reuse the names for different characters. So, so I kind of like this is one of the times where they reused a code name for a character. And it's this is a different person using this name. Instead of you just saying it's just a different person, but they gave it a reason, that connection back. So I kind of like doing that. And I'm looking at the head down and realize it's probably they repainted a Helix head for that one. So this one I think they got with like a desert pack for the Pursuit of Cobra line, I think is what it was. Excuse me, with that, and I think this is the only version of it that they had done with that. I'm now kind of flying through these, but so the next one, this was kind of hard because I wanted a computer specialist, and they actually had several to choose from. Surprisingly, because I kind of back in the original, I liked mainframe. There's one figure I never got that I really wanted. But now it's the modern time, and the computers is a big part of the military and the military experience with that. So they did a version of High Tech, who had which I thought was neat, from who originally was in the Sigma 6 Joe, which I actually liked the Sigma 6 line when it came out. I really liked the how all the gear worked on them. But then hard drive, there was one other guy, I can't remember his name. Sergeant Hacker. Yeah, that was it. And I was like, I just couldn't bring hard drive is a pun in itself. It's kind of a hacky, no pun intended on that one, for a computer expert. But Sergeant Hacker, that was kind of a bridge too far for me with that one. So I chose a hard drive to be our computer specialist as well. The wrist computer was great. I think I had like a flip up screen on it, which was always really, really cool with that. So next up, Helix. So this is one I think came from the IDW comic. It was produced as part of the. It was like, they did all the Rise of Cobra movie figures. Then they did the more figures after that using the same packaging. I think she was part of that. So this is kind of like my Scarlet pick, because I kind of wanted, I got, Bob Triggs is my Lady J pick. This is my Scarlet pick. The spy, and I think she really cool look, very interesting. The two-tone hair paint app was pretty cool. I think I saw the classified figure. They kind of made her like a ninja or something, which I think, okay, that's kind of stupid, but this is a really nice figure to have. So she would feel kind of that Scarlet, the intelligence specialist field with that as well. So and then next I have it could be reworked with that. So next, I just wanted a simple vehicle driver, and this is Roll Bar, and he originally came with that really nice Humvee. They actually did that Humvee for the line with the swappable weapons on the top, where they kind of did a vehicle that was just a straight up, no sci-fi or future tech. It was just a straight up simple Humvee, and the figure that came with it was a very simple figure with it. So this is my vehicle driver. So this is my clutch. Somebody who's a dependable soldier that gets people places. So this is going to be my transportation specialist. I went back and forth on this one. I almost chose Cannonball, who was the driver for the Rhino, which was, I think, probably is the modern 3 3/4 inch collection. My all-time favorite vehicle was that Rhino. They did this version because it came with the green. I think this also was the Valor versus Venom line too, but it came with the green Humvee, the jungle Humvee, and then they did a desert version of it as well. As they did that with the desert color on that. And then finally, I think this is my last one. This is number 10. This is Ashiko. So this was kind of a left field wild card one. This was from late in the line, part of the Pursuit of Cobra line. It was the it was one of the vehicles. He came with one of the vehicles that was done as what they call the Ross exclusives. Stuff they had shown folks, but then didn't put them in retail and they dumped them on Ross. And what he did is he came with a motorcycle that actually transformed into like an exoskeleton. It was basically it's Hasbro ripping off Robotech, or for the oh my gosh, the new generation Robotech, and then which was a ripoff of, which was a redub of Genesis Cybermuspedia, where they had the motorcycles that turned into battle armor. It was a very it was probably one of the most frustrating vehicles. Hey Tristan, it was probably one of the most frustrating vehicles to put to make that change into that. And so Ashika, he's also kind of my nod to the martial arts guys on the team, because I didn't want to, again, I wasn't pulling Snake Eyes, because in this version iteration of JJ, Snake Eyes is in his late 60s at least. So this is my martial art, but he also got the high-tech motorcycle. So this would be my vehicle driver with that. So just to go back over real quick, so this would have been my idea of the launch of the 10 figures. I should put them on one slide. So we got Agent Faces, Bomb Strike, Crosshair, Dart, Depth Charge, Dial Tone, Hard Drive, Helix, Roll Bar, and the Ashiko with that. So one of the things too I always loved about, and I know this is a controversial thing to bring up, is I always enjoyed the diversity of G.I. Joe, how it just showed a lot of people from different walks of life. And I really wanted to put an African American on the team. But the problem is with that is they post 94, for some reason, Hasbro thought the only African American characters had to be either a new version of Stalker or Heavy Duty, like over and over and over again. And so I was looking at I had a, I mean, I think I saw they did the Dr. Lincoln for the Val versus Venom, but I didn't care about that figure, that character. So I really had trouble finding one with that. It's just Hasbro, they were just really stuck with that going back to the well type of deal. So those are the 10 that I chose. As Ashika was very hard. Like I just stumbled onto it. He was released with the Hiss Scout, which was a cool vehicle too, because I loved how it connected to that new Hiss tank that they did, that the final Hiss tank at the end. With that, it snapped into the back of it. He was released with the Hiss Scout, and it was just a whole lot of it was. I was very like, I think there was only one on the shelf when I'd walked into Ross and had found it that day. So it's one that probably a lot of people don't even know exists with that. And Robert, they spammed Heavy Duty. Just gosh, until they did until they changed ripcord for the movie. Then they did a couple of ripcords like that. But like I said, I'm trying to keep a continuity going for this. So now it came to the point to pick the commander of this group. And so I went back through and was looking at who from the 82 to 94 line could conceivably be the commander. Again, to me at this point, Duke would be too old. Again, these were folks, most of the original characters or the older characters like Stalker and Snake Eyes and Hawk, Wild Bill, folks like that had been in the Vietnam War. Canonically, they were in the Vietnam War, so they were in their, let's see, by the time 82, they were all in their mid to late 30s, early 40s is what they were pushing. Then Duke was probably, somebody came in a little bit afterwards. So again, and I didn't want like the 1000th Duke and the 1000th Snake Eyes. figure. So I kind of was looking at folks. I kind of went back and forth on a few of none of the pilots, because all your pilots are officers. I X'd them out. I even looked at. I thought maybe Captain Gridiron, because he was somebody that didn't get a whole lot of attention and a whole lot of love during the original line. Even like Super Trooper, or Rapid Fire or somebody like that. So I went back and I began to look at the original 13, and I settled on one because, I'll just go ahead and show you. So my commander for the new 10 would have been Grunt, and here's why. So in '82, Grunt was an E4, which was a Army specialist. So that means by the time he joined the GI Joe team, he had probably been in for at least 4 years previously, and had the special force training and selection stuff, and then gets picked up for the GI Joe team, and he spends time as a Joe for the next several years, and then he did something really neat. Larry Hama, he did something really neat with this character. So he would have been, again, in his early 20s by the time he starts in issue 1 of G.I. Joe. So later on, he does some time in. They all get promoted to E5. All the original ones were when they opened the new pit. So they moved them all to admin stuff. And he decides that he is going to, at the end of his contract, not re-enlist. And he actually goes to college to get a degree in engineering, which is what a lot of military veterans did. So it was just a really neat, interesting. They had a whole issue about it, and even did in a couple issues later, kind of did a little callback where he just check him out, where he's kind of having some issues adapting to civilian life. So eventually, in the toy line, though, they bring Grunt back in. They reissue Grunt again. I think it was I don't remember if it was. He might have been a Sonic Fighter. I'm not 100% sure, or something like that. But they bring him in and they make him an E5 again, and I'm just like, that's not right. I know in the comics he came back once after the Cobra Island Civil War. He was part of the group that Roadblock reached out to help him break the Joes out of confinement and to find the evidence that proved that their invasion was sanctioned by the Jugglers. So in my view, he's probably going to be in when we launch this, because the idea is back this about 2001 is we're relaunching the G.I. Joe brand with these 10 new characters. So he would probably now be in. So my thing is he gets out, he goes to college, gets his degree, comes back in as an officer selection. And so he becomes an officer. And so he's probably about in 2001, he's probably major, probably a lieutenant colonel. And he gets tapped because of his past experience to lead this new iteration of G.I. Joe. And plus, as an infantry officer, he's got the skills to pull this together and as a thing. So that was just kind of like my view of, and that was kind of the idea that we're going to give ourselves one character from the original line that we could reuse. That wasn't a Duke or a Snake Eyes over and over again. So that was kind of my vision. That would be the idea. So it's kind of keeping the same idea of G.I. Joe Real American Hero, and just moving the franchise forward with new characters to explore, and new territories to break with the franchise. It just kind of seems that that Hasbro, they started out doing a lot of these new characters, and then they hit that 25th anniversary and saw what a great seller that was. And then you had the movie that they put a lot of hopes into. And so you had the movie versions of the old characters, and just from there, Hasbro just seemed to not want to move forward with it. So it's every wave is there's a Snake Eyes, and I get it. I picked up the classified Snake Eyes. I just picked up the retro carded Flint today. I get it. There's some of those characters I love, and I want the 6-inch versions of those 3 3/4 inch versions as well. But just this idea that which that was they very in the beginning of JoJo very rarely reissued characters. Snake Eyes, Cobra Commander, and Duke were kind of the exceptions. It's that the further down, it's like the further into the line they got, the more they began to reissue those characters. Again and again and again. But it was all about the new characters. It was all about the older characters, and which is exactly what military life was like. The roster was always changing. People were being transferred to different places. People were getting out. It was just the way of life, and so it was a very military mindset of, things move forward with the military. The gear is different now than what I had when I was in. The vehicles are different now than what I had in. And they had so much potential, but that's even, but then Hasbro just kept going back to the well. And, I would have been so my view of the classified line, they should have had the retro carded line to be the 6-inch versions of the old figures, and the classified line should have been newer characters, moving the line forward. But that was kind of like our idea. That's what I wanted to work with, with Chad and kind of talk about that. I would still love to see what he came up with. Then at some point in the future, I would love to actually do to do Cobras. To look at Cobra, even though I would love for the franchise to move past Cobra and gone into created a new threat to deal with. I know in the Devil's Due run, I kind of liked when they brought in the Coil, and then eventually when they went to America's Elite, doing bringing the Red Shadows into the real American Hero world. I thought that was really cool to be able to do that. But that's that's either here or there. I'm not in charge. I was just our thing was going to be, let's pretend to if it was 2001 and we had the control to pick these new characters, out of all the new characters, how would we relaunch the line to move it forward? But listen, this is still a great, ever since a kid. I mean, it's still a great line. I think it's just something about military figures. As much as they hate corporations, hate them, it resonates with kids, and those are still kids at heart. There's still something, no matter what happens, there seems to be something noble about this idea of people that will give up their comforts and opportunities and their lives to go halfway around the world, and and fight what we see as evil. That's it's the tough, like I said, military life is basically you are taught, and I think you have to have a predisposition for this. You're taught that the most noble thing you do is sacrifice yourself for the sake of others. And we have men and women out there day and night that are willing to sacrifice their lives so that those of us back here can sleep under a blanket of freedom. And there's something about that resonates. It's noble. And this is why people, why Lord of the Rings is still popular, and Night Mythic Legions with a lot of the heroes, He-Man. It's woven within our DNA as humans for some almost. And so I think there will always be a place for G.I. Joe, no matter how hard people are trying to ruin that. And I've just recently gotten into, like I said, a few years ago, I had to sell off my entire G.I. Joe collection. I only kept a couple of small items to pay for bills. Yeah, Tristan, let me go to the chat, and I think sorry, I'm bad about this. So yeah. So and that's where they were. Well, they actually Flint was supposed to be Duke's replacement, because in the the way it was set up in the comic, the first Urchin Joes, they get retired after the pit was attacked the first time, and they become the support element. And Duke becomes it. Then later on, they bring in Flint, who's supposed to be the cocky guy, and all that stuff. And then they were trying to replace Flint with Falcon because he's basically a clone of it as well. But that was the thing, is that they did that. So like, they replaced Grunt with Footloose. It basically at the beginning it was kind of a 1-for-1 transfer. You had your infantry troopers, was Grunt, then replaced with that. Then Rock and Roll was replaced by Roadblock, and Torpedo, Wetsuit, Stalker, Beachhead. It was kind of almost a 1-for-1, and then it just, but the line got very popular. They kept expanding it and adding more specialists in there as well. So it was a very interesting thing they were doing. Because a lot of these guys they either were military, or they understood the military, because of the culture, and they used a lot of reference material, and plus with Hama guiding it and his background, it took on a very realistic so again, that's because they like I said, basically it was the worst copy. I mean, right down to the character had a shotgun too. It was Flint had a shotgun, Falcon had a shotgun. Flint had a beret, Falcon had a beret. So it's kind of like, it was just, but it was a great time. For those of you that don't know the joy of going into any store, just about any store, whether it was a 5 and Dime or a big Toys R Us, is Joe's were on the shelf. It was great. So I've been able to now to kind of start collecting specific pieces that I want back. Like I've done this, the Skyhawks. Right now I'm collecting the different versions of the Conquest. Actually, this week I have so I'm kind of sticking to air elements. Joe Air, kind of like an air and space museum type of deal. And I think last time the show, somebody asked me, what would, it was on Figure Fight Club. Asked me what would the grail of my collection be, and I said, well, there's two vehicles that would be I would consider the grail of that collection if I could get a hold of. One was the Crusader shuttle, which was where they took the Defiant shuttle and they actually sold it at retail, just the shuttle part without the launcher and the other part, as the Crusader. I would love to get one of those because it's a big piece, but it's not as big as the whole Defiant complex. And the second would be the X-19 Phantom stealth fighter. And actually, I've found one on Macari that's being shipped to me right now for a very good deal, and it looks to be in very good shape. The only thing it's missing is the winglets on the top and the 2 glide bombs. So for a very, very good price, and that stuff I can find the bits and pieces to fix that with. But that's kind of so I'm collecting 3. I'm falling back in love with what, as Chad calls, the Lord scale. Yes, he is on the class but since burnout. Yeah, that's one of the ones I had as a kid. I did break that one rule because Breaker was on clearance target for the 1250. Yeah. I kind of pick and choose. Like I said, that Snake Eyes was one, and then of course this is my favorite version of Cobra Commander. I love that in 3 3/4 inch scale. I know a lot of folks. I've been trying to collect the original 13, and Hasbro's making that hard for me. Yeah, it was like I said, it looks like it's in very good shape. It had all the doors for the landing gear on it. Even had the nose cone, which is often missing from that. I mean, it didn't have the pilot. I don't care about the pilot with that. And it had the 2 missiles and the little pull-out things, and everything was like to work. It was just missing those little winglets on the top and those 2 bombs, and I got it for $60. So there are some deals on Macquarie to find with that. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, hang on to that because I've seen complete versions go for a lot of money with that. But it's a massive piece. The engineering on these toys. There's nothing like it on the market today. I'm working on even the Conquest, a very simple plane like the Conquest. I'm working on. I'm actually had bought several of them. With each one has something wrong with it, and I'm putting together into one workable plane for a side project. And I'm just amazed at the engineering that went into, yeah, just the engineering that went into these toys back in the day for a toy that was, not expected to be still in use for 30 years. And that's also too why we find so many with missing pieces and broken pieces, because these things were played with and played with hard, and they still stood up to the time. But like I said, it's just but you can get lost in the past a lot. But but the idea of just moving it forward, and that's kind of what we had wanted to talk about tonight, was about moving it forward, these new characters, because there's so many ideas out there, so many characters, and just this rut they seem to get into, and it's not just Hasbro, it's a corporate mentality in general. The corporate mentality in general is just this safe bets, minimum risks, and we forget that's what really made everything great, was people taking risks, taking big swings. Can you imagine a pitching of something like the Defiant, or even something like the Terror Drone? It was just it was just shocking, and then plus this idea too, that again, I tell folks all the time, the magic of G.I. Joe was that if you were a kid, you could walk into the store with $5 or $50, and you could find something that fit into your collection, that all worked together. You could get a vehicle for $5. You could buy a couple of figures for $2. You could buy a large vehicle for $25. An even larger vehicle for about $50. And so whatever you had, whatever they didn't turn your money away. They had something for you at every price point, which is something, like I said, we've kind of lost that down. But some of it is just the youth today has just changed as well. Let's see. At least they retired just bring new members. The transfer, they slaughter the old ones, and then bring the new ones. Yeah, and and then in G.I. Joe, spoiler alert. Excuse me. Hama eventually did that in the comics. They gave him the go ahead to slaughter a bunch of figures that they were not going to discontinue. Which now they make those figures again. The Ostriker, Crankcase is one that got killed off, and they're bringing them back in the package, and that's why they would lose trademarks, because they said, well, we're never going to make this figure again. And then they decided, well, we're going to make these figures again, and now they kind of name them Agent Scarlet and Tomahawk and Steel Core, because they lost it. Because they didn't protect their brand, they didn't shelter it. But if you're always moving forward, you don't have to worry about that. You can let a name expire. I would have liked to see that, also in my version too, this is kind of a multi thing. I would have, so I'd like to do something like an enemy list the next time that, relaunch Cobra or relaunch something else with some of the newer bad guy characters. But then also too, I thought too that you could keep those characters, the older characters, in the live, by eventually, just do the adventure team, bring the adventure team concept back, and that's where you can put Scarlet and Duke and Stalker and Snake Eyes, as these guys are retired and they're going out, just having adventures, global adventures around the world, and do that as have a do that as kind of like one in the Imaginext or Play School scale that they did, to kind of attract a younger audience, but kind of bring them into the lore a little bit, reconnecting. Then you can do them in the 4-inch figures. You can do some 6-inch figures that connect it all together. Somebody said you can reuse some of these older names, keep them going, and then introduce new concepts, but by reviving the old Adventure Team concept, which kept the 12-inch Joes going, for a while until we hit 82 with a smaller scale. There's just so many things they could do. But again, the market's got to be there. I think by focusing the market too narrow, especially on adult collectors, um, but it also too the way kids have changed. I've got 4 boys growing up. One's really into Transformers. Uh, my oldest one is. It's kind of followed him into his adulthood. But the rest of them, they just, if it's not in a game or something like that, then they don't do it. Yeah, the booklets. Yeah, that was the thing. That was the catalog that showed you what was coming out that year. So for those of you who don't remember, they would have a catalog within the vehicles that showed it was basically a cross sale. On the back of the card, you had all the characters listed as your cross sale, but it would show the so it came out. So twice a year they did a book, a catalog book. It was your summer, spring, and your fall, winter. And so it was divided into. So what would happen is your book would show the vehicles and characters from the last fall, winter, and then the new stuff for spring, summer. So they would still keep some of that stuff on the shelves from the old run, and then it would move into, and then they would remove the old stuff off the shelves, and then you would get the next catalog for the year that would have the spring, summer stuff in the front, and then the fall, winter, the stuff that was coming. So it's like every year you're basically looking at 2 waves of figures and vehicles, and then then the next year it would be they would release the catalog with the previous year's fall, winter, with the new spring, summer, and vice versa. So it got you really hyped and had you planning your collection. So you knew what to save up your birthday money and your chore money, and search the couch for for spare change, recycling. Oh man, I can't remember what my parents used to call those things. Sometimes I would look at those things so much they would disappear. I think my parents would take them and throw them away because I'd get too obsessed with it, and they want me to be disappointed about things I couldn't get. But the thing is, was even the stuff you couldn't get, there was always stuff you could get. That was like you were always satisfied with JJ, and plus there's so much stuff out there too. It's what made playing with your friends so much fun with this stuff, because if you didn't have something, chances are your neighbor had it, and you guys could play it all, put it all together, and play all together. And then we would trade figures. it was we would do that. So it was just great. But it was it's a toy line that really, outside of Star Wars, like I said, Star Wars got me when I was real little, and then G.I. Joe was the one that really got me. So you can see my collection, like I said, and now I've replaced it with Valverse. As it's still get some of the classifieds, but I'm spending a lot of my money. I'm really looking forward to Series 6 coming out. I'm already counting the days, but like I said, I'll probably when I get that Phantom in, I'll take a video of that and put that up, because that was just a really cool jet. I like it better than the Sky Striker. Everybody gets ate up over the Sky Striker, but that X-19 Phantom stealth fighter was probably the pinnacle of the aircraft vehicles. And right next to the in the Valorverse Venom line, in the modern line, that Thunderwing, the F-22, the 2-seater F-22, it was an amazing vehicle. I wish they would re-release that instead of another Sky Striker again, and they could rip out all the internals of the firing mechanisms and the electronics out of that and just release that as a regular plane to save money. I would love to get one of those again. I had to sell one of those off, and that I would like to get that back again as well. So again, this is kind of a little bit shorter. Again, this is my 10th episode. Again, I hope Chad's okay. Um, he said, uh, check my messages one more time. Uh, yeah, just hope everything's running okay with that. Um, oh yeah, yeah, that's you guys are living outside. Oh, that's the other thing about JoJo, man. That thing had global distribution. It was amazing, because they wanted people. They wanted people to. The companies want you to have their product. It was, that's kind of how things are. Yeah, yeah. It's I'm assuming he's okay unless you're otherwise. But, I just again, I know he started a job and it's busy and all that stuff, but he said the time difference or something. But but I'm again, this is my planned show. Like I said, this is the last show of the season. Season one comes to an end. Uh, you know, um, with that, and it gives me a couple months to plan, make some equipment upgrades, and try to get some good guests for next year. Picking a different date and time. Yeah, Hot Rod, I don't know. Like I said, he was going to be my guest tonight. I haven't heard from him. I've messaged him a couple of times. I don't have a direct way to contact him as well. So I just hope it's just a confusion of the time, uh, yeah, time and day, because like I said, again, it's a Monday night. Mondays, it's probably I'm going to switch my show to a different date, just because the Mondays is very rough, and it's I'm coming off of a very busy day today. As I tell folks, I was busier than a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest. Last I heard is keeping him busy, but like I say he'll probably reach out. Oh man, sorry I forgot, and maybe I'll he can pay me back by letting me come on uh his show and talk about and go over his picks with that. So again, like I said, after this, those that catch us on the replay squad, let me know what your picks would have been. Like I said, it was kind of fun to go through that thought experiment of going to Rio Joe Comic, like going through each year and trying to. It was kind of hard. I think I had about 20, 25 picks, and I kind of had to whittle them down to the 10. Thank you, Tristan. I appreciate that. I know subscriptions are slow. My plan is once I hit 500, I've got some giveaways I want to do. I've got a Fortnite boat still in package to give away and a few other things as well. The busier as a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest. Yeah, that's pretty busy. Yeah, it's just been it works crazy, and plus we're coming to the end of the year, which is why I wanted to do this as my last one because we get into the holidays. I've got November's busy. I have my birthday is in November. Actually, I get two birthdays. I get my birthday and I get the Marine Corps birthday. And it's also Veterans Day, and I work with veterans. I'm a veteran. I work in the veteran space. So I've got with Veterans Day coming on. I get a lot of requests for my time during that, and then you got Thanksgiving holidays, and we go roll right into Christmas. We're doing all the end of the year stuff, and also get ready for the holidays and the first of the year. So I figured 2 months off, reassess, get some better equipment, and then come back. And I've had a lot of fun doing this. Also, also give a shout out to Abby with Figure Fight Club for letting me and anybody else brave enough to go on there on Tuesday night. So I will be on Tuesday night sharing some of my pickups with Figure Fight Club as well. And then special thanks too to the to Ryan over to the 3POA who just one night on his stream decided to open up to throw the StreamYard link up in the chat and let people come on there for a minute. And I did it, and I kind of realized a little bit how easy this was. There's a lot of stuff to do, but it wasn't as daunting as I thought it would be. to do that, and just this community that's kind of grown up as we as we learn together. And so like I said, we'll continue these conversations going into next year. With that, and again, but of course, I'll still be in the chat. Seeing you guys around. With that, let me go check everything one more time. See if I got any messages. I've got that. Also plan, like I said, I'll be, even though I won't be doing the live stream once a month, I'm still going to try to get some more content put out between there. I've got the still the Skyhawk stuff I'm working on, and now the Conquest stuff I'm working on. I know I've got the shipping notice for the ramen tank. It hasn't hit the port yet. The ship, so I'm expecting to get that in. I'm seeing people get theirs in. I'm getting real jealous and anxious to see it. And then of course Series 6 of the Valver stuff that's coming out. Then once I get all this fixed up in here real nice, I'm working on trying to get some lights for the shelves back there and get the shelves all set up with my figures and vehicles. I'll do a new room tour like that. That feels a lot better. Got this whole thing cleaned up, and so with that, thank you all for being here tonight. Special thanks. Please hit the like button. Thanks for those that subscribe tonight. That always helps. For those of you that watch the replay, please leave a comment that you caught the replay. And again, put in your picks. So what 5 to 10 ones would you like to in that whole line that you would like to see Hasbro do some more stuff with? You created something and just kind of just let it run, lie fallow there. So with that, it's been a great year. Looking forward to next year. Thank you guys for taking your time to allow me to come into your spaces and to ramble and talk about some things. And for those that have been my guests over the past 10 months, greatly appreciate that. Loved having those conversations. I look forward to having more in what is it, 2026? Shouldn't we be on the moon by now? Shouldn't I be doing this broadcast from my retirement home on the moon? Wasn't that what I was promised as a young Gen Xer, that we would be taking trips to the moon by now, or at least getting to work in my flying car? But we can't tell what the future holds, but I plan on trying to bring you guys more and keep some more entertaining content. And I look forward to it. So with that, I'm going to find a little button that says to end the stream. And with that, you all have a great night, and I'll catch you around. And then I press that and